My Adventures with Superman, Episode 5, Most Eligible Superman. Let's talk about it. Hi, I'm Vactor. I'm here on This Comic Cooks just to talk about all things comics. And right now, This Comic Cooks loves My Adventures with Superman. This has been a great show for the first 1.5 seasons. We're on the halfway point of season 2. We're finally getting Supergirl, which was teased in the trailer. We saw Kara for the kind of the back of her head, and she's been looming large the first half of this season. Episode 5, we actually get her in person. And I like the take on Kara in this episode, voiced by Kiana Madeira. This is Supergirl, finding her place on Earth, finding out she's kind of like a fish out of water. We've seen that story before with Supergirl. The relationship with Jimmy, I thought was interesting, seeing her react to him. And Jimmy and Supergirl have that relationship on that CBS Supergirl show, but not in a lot of other different media. So another point that we've seen before, but interesting that they have the whole, I would say the first 2/3 of the episode is that Supergirl fish out of water, tasting ice cream for the first time, plot that we've seen many times in TV and movies before. But then the last third, we find out kind of what her mission was, kind of to take over Earth. And she's got this overarching manager, basically Brainiac, voiced by Michael Emerson, and taking over the planet, finding that Kal-El, her cousin, was not the warrior that she thought he was, that he hadn't taken over Earth. That's all, to me, interesting. And it got this season moving for me, kind of got it going in a positive direction. So far, I think we've gotten a lot of, I don't want to say stagnation, but that's the reason why you're not seeing Schaff on this episode. He had previously reviewed the last couple with me, and he said that it just wasn't doing it for him. It was just kind of remaining in a place in kind of turning its wheels, and wasn't moving for him. I've still liked a lot of the relationship stuff, a lot of the world building that they've done with General Lane, Lois and Clark's relationship. In this episode, we see them actually have a breakup, a rocky relationship, the relationship on the rocks, I should say. And that's all good. I'm enjoying that for the most part in this season. There wasn't any of the Deathstroke stuff in here. Wasn't any of the other Superman villain type of stuff. Although we do have that cameo from who we know is going to be the Cyborg Superman, maybe, at least from the comics, Hank Henshaw, voiced by Max Middleman. I think him on that dating show is just setting him up. We've seen him before. This is not the first time we've seen him in My Adventures with Superman, but they're definitely playing like a long game with him. And it got renewed for another season. That was some good news. Season 3 of My Adventures with Superman, probably in the works right now as we speak, because they already got the green light. So I think he's going to be either introduced at the end of this season or in season 3. We're definitely getting Cyborg Superman. So that, as a Superman fan, is fun to know that we're getting that. But in this season in particular, like I said, the things that I'm enjoying right now are the Clark and Lois relationships, the Jimmy being the rich guy and his money dwindling, his net worth slowly fading as the season goes along. And then also this enemy plot line with Brainiac and this alien invasion plot line of them coming to Earth, now with Kara being the Harbinger. I think that's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out in the rest of this season. But now we've got the Supergirl Superman relationship. So just building on top of all these relationships that we've seen so far on the show, I'm enjoying it. The animation still, to me, is knocking it out of the park. I think the blending the anime sensibilities with Superman is something that we hadn't seen before, is a unique and fresh take, modernizes it, makes it 2024 version of Superman, and something that I can kind of pass down to my son and say, hey, look, this is Superman, and I think you'll relate to it in a common or a current standpoint. So I love all of that stuff that they're doing right now. The voice acting to me is still top notch. I'm loving Jack Quaid's version of Clark. This is he brings a vulnerability, I think, that we haven't seen in Clark, maybe even since Christopher Reeve. That's something that I loved about his, not only his Clark, but his Superman as well. That he's so strong. He's like the strongest man in the world, but he's also so vulnerable, and he's got a heart of gold. Jack Quaid, I think, very much embodies that in this version of Clark, this version of Superman. He's so young, kind of like a Batman Year One type of a scenario with Superman. Superman Year One. And also interesting that he's got this new power that kind of emerged in this episode, the blue thing out of his mouth, that blue light, which I'm like, is that freeze breath or is that some type of laser ray? I don't know, but interesting either way. Electric blue Superman, kind of throwing all those things into a melting pot. But it's just something that I'm really enjoying. The Lois being Korean, that aspect of it, we've never seen that. Lois has been white in every version of Superman that has existed pretty much. And Jimmy being black, we saw that in the CBS Supergirl show. So that's not necessarily something new. But it brings up that point of the same thing with Spider-Man, Peter Parker, a couple years ago with Miles Morales being Spider-Man. The question came out like, well, does Peter Parker necessarily have to be white? Is that something that's core and essential to his character? No, not really. It was just at the time he was created, Peter Parker in the 60s in New York, the majority was white males. So if he was being created in the current generation, why wouldn't he be black? Why wouldn't he be another race? It just, to me, it doesn't subtract anything. It doesn't change anything. It's just, this is a current story, but the elements are still there. The foundation of the characters are still the same. Lois is still that inquisitive reporter. Jimmy is still that plucky sidekick, bringing the comic relief. Jimmy Olsen, a great character, and this is just another iteration and version of that. So none of that stuff is, bringing the show down for me. I'm having a great time. This was an episode that brought a lot of world building, brought Kara in. Finally, we've seen Supergirl. Just because the reason I say finally is we saw her before this season even aired. One of the first promos and posters was Supergirl. So we're finally getting that. And I'm happy with the version of Supergirl that we got. I liked everything that they did so far. It wasn't a groundbreaking version. It wasn't something I'd never seen before. But it falls in line with Supergirl, my ideas. And I'm interested to see how this new James Gunn Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow plays out, because that was one of my favorite comics. Actually, no, that was my favorite comic of, was it last year or 2 years ago when it came out? Tom King, one of my favorite writers. And that was the first time seeing that artist. And it was like, whoa, this is something new, something fresh. So I'm loving Supergirl in all forms of media right now. I'm kind of on the Supergirl train. So I'm interested to see, what are your thoughts on my adventures with Superman? Not only this episode 5 of season 2, Most Eligible Bachelor, Most Eligible Superman. What did you think about this season so far? At the halfway point, are you enjoying it? Are you not enjoying it? Or are you just kind of where Shoff was? It's just right in the middle. It's not good. It's not bad. It's just meh. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Always, anytime you have something to say about comic books, definitely share it here on This Comic Cooks. We'll be back next week talking more My Adventures with Superman right here on YouTube.